Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield Podcast.
Well, welcome to the Stephen Mansfield Podcast. Glad you're joining me and glad we can consider some important things together. I want to talk to you now about the issue of age. I have been telling everybody I can get my hands on in my work with men, in my Great Man podcast, everywhere I possibly can, to consider the fact that we are likely, all of us, to live longer than we expect. I'll tell you what, this is a pretty important issue. At this point, many people think of the age of retirement as being somewhere around 61, 62, maybe ranging up to 65. But the reality is that we are all likely, if we don't die of some other reason, we are all likely to live much longer than we expect. We're likely to work much longer. We're likely to need money for much longer. We are likely to die at a much later age. In fact, if you are of average age and listening to this and you take care of yourself and you do meaningful work and you don't allow undue stress to dominate your life and nothing unusual happens, cancer, car wreck, etc., you are very likely at this time in history to live into your 90s. And yet still government documents, government standards expect people to retire somewhere in their early 60s. So we've got two or three issues that are going to arise here. The first of this is personal. You've got to prepare like you are going to live longer than you expect. I'm still talking to people who talk to me about retiring around the age of 62 or 63, but they might live easily another 30 years. You could live into your 90s, 30 years past when they expect to retire. Now, first of all, I'll tell you, as a Christian, I'm not convinced that retirement, that ceasing working or ceasing doing meaningful work, you might choose to cease one arena of work, one job you've done for a while, but ceasing to work at all and sitting on your butt and watching football, that is not a life. That is not what you're made for. That's not what God ordained you for. So quit a particular career field if you want to, but do not think about your life as coming to a working end in the early 60s, because you're going to spend the next 30 years, potentially, basically in a very unhealthy state, an unfruitful state, missing what you're made for, and by the way, missing the factors that make for a joyful life. So I'm urging people, especially the men I talk to, because men don't live quite as long as women, but although I'm delighted to impact women with the same message, take care of yourself as though you're going to live longer. Invest and save as though you're going to live longer, earn as though you're going to live longer, and have what the kids call side hustles. Have other things that you want to do. Don't just have a life that's about work and going home and watching TV and drinking. Have a life that's meaningful. Have other things that you do, so that if what you do 9 to 5, for example, completely went away, you'd still have a meaningful, happy, interesting, stimulating, and maybe even prosperous lifestyle. Some of those side hustles ought to be making you some money. And that's the way to prosperity in the future. The key to wealth is multiple income streams, as we all know. So think in terms of your personal life and think in terms of it going forward. But we've got another issue to deal with in our society, and that's ageism. I'm recording this the day after the 2020 Super Bowl, the Super Bowl for the 2019 season. And the Kansas City Chiefs won, and their coach is Andy Reid. Now, Andy Reid was the coach with the most wins of all coaches in the NFL who didn't have a Super Bowl victory. So it was a big emotional moment. He finally won after all of his success, after all of his great seasons, after all of his other awards and championships. He finally won the Super Bowl. Now, here's what's interesting. Andy Reid is 61 years old. Well, I consider 61 years old to be quite young, to be honest with you. It's not just that I'm a little older. It's not older than 61, but that I'm a little older than probably a lot of you listening to this podcast. But it is that 61, in the comparison to how long people are likely to live, is relatively young. People talked about him like he should be put in the grave as soon as he had the Gatorade dumped on him at the end of the game. People are talking about him like now he's done. Well, he's saying, I might coach for years more. Absolutely. And this is part of the ageism in our society, because our society has not caught up with our changing actuarial tables. It's not caught up with our demographics. It's not caught up with the statistics of how long people live and how long they can live vibrantly and alive and work. 61 sounds ancient. Well, 61 is nothing. He could coach another decade. He could live another 30 years and still be healthy. I mean, we've had a 90-year-old run the Boston Marathon in the last years. It's unbelievable what we've had happen. And I remind you of my hero, as my wife often says, you're not going to hear Stephen talk more than 5 minutes without bringing up Winston Churchill. My biggest hero other than Jesus is Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill died in 1965 at the age of 90. He was prime minister into his 70s. This is a man who smoked numerous cigars and drank alcohol every day, had alcohol in his system from about 10 o'clock in the morning on. He didn't drink a lot, but he did have alcohol in his system. And died lucid at 90 years of age, served as a prime minister at the age of 70. And by the way, that was almost 70 years ago. Well, maybe exactly 70 years ago. He was prime minister in the early 50s. Think about that now. That's 70 years ago. Think about how much medical advancement there's been during that time, how much our nutrition is better, how much our medications are better, how much more we know about health and exercise, all sorts of things like that. So the point I'm trying to make here is that for those of you who lead businesses, for those of you who are involved in American public policy, for those of you who are involved in shaping our culture, we've got a bit of a time warp going here. People are assuming still culturally that the early 60s is a time when folks start to sit in their rocking chair. It ain't true. And those who think that way not only are going to be engaging in a legal problem of ageism, which is going to become more a matter for the courts, I think, soon, but also they will probably not prepare themselves well for what is coming in the future, because the reality is we're very likely to live well into our 80s. In fact, had there not been an opioid crisis that caused such a horrible epidemic of deaths, our actuarial tables would be showing us that the average American lives into the mid-80s. The average American, barring other diseases and sickness, lives into the mid-80s these days. And soon it's going to be in the 90s. It's rising rapidly. So think about age, think about your own preparation, and think about ageism as a disease that is infecting our society, causing deception, might cause lawsuits, and that we need to eradicate.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author, a popular speaker, and a frequent faith and culture commentator on Fox and CNN. His groundbreaking books on faith and society include The Faith of George W. Bush, The Search for God in Guinness, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, and Lincoln's Battle with God. Learn more at stephenmansfield.tv.